Hi, it's Ursula from ursula-smith.com, and I've made lots of videos using cutouts that I've cut on my digital cutter. I've made masks and stencils and cutouts that I layered together to make my own embossing plates / folders. So today I'm just going to try to give you a quick overview of how I go about that, since it occurred to me that I've never shown you all that. So I am in Silhouette Studio, and I am not going to do automatic tracing. Most of the vector-based drawing programs have that capability, but I rarely use that because I find they just don't do the best job, especially since I'm starting with pictures that I've taken on my phone or my camera. And I will admit I'm not the greatest photographer. And so usually the edges are not as crisp as I would like. And especially in the case of this image in particular, there's not a lot of differentiation in coloring. It's pretty monotone. And so this is a stonework piece that was on the side of a building, or it was a plaque. I don't really remember, from Granada, Spain. And I love the pomegranate, and actually Granada means pomegranate, according to my daughter, who I was visiting at the time. And so I love this image, and so I want to trace it, but I'm going to trace it by hand. And the way that I do that is I use the drawing tool in Silhouette Studio. Most vector-based drawings have that same capability. I just find Silhouette Studio just a little more intuitive to my brain anyway. And so again, you'll see that's what I'm using today. And so I'm going to draw. And then up here, you'll see an option for smoothing. It starts out pretty high, and I always set that down much lower. So somewhere around 15 or 16%. And what that does, it adds a lot more points. And so vector-based drawing draws with points, and I'm going to get a lot of them. And we can tweak them, as you'll see as we go along. So then I take my drawing tool, and I just start to go around the shape, and you'll see, oh my gosh, I am a terrible drawer, really, really bad, especially when it comes to round things. But you'll see it's not really going to matter. I'm just getting the basic shape, and when I get to here, I click over that black dot, and it creates a closed shape. So then I can come to the shape tool, and the first thing that I do is I decide what color I want that shape to be. So I'll come here, and I'm going to leave it as the line style of red for right now. And then I'm going to fill it with red as well. And boy, you can tell I'm way off. But you'll also see if I fill it that I can't see what's underneath to try and tweak it. Again, that's easily solved. I could come over here to transparency and set the transparency up. And so now I can see my shape, and I can see the underlying piece of art that I was trying to trace. So I will then go in and start to tweak the points. So the first thing that I do is I choose the Edit Point tool, and then you'll see if you double click, it will, if you're using the select tool, that arrow, and you double click on the shape, it will bring up the point editing tool panel. I generally don't use that now that they have these options up on the top, which basically have the same options for the most part, at least the ones that I use. And so if you click the point editing tool, it'll show up on the top. First thing that I do with this brand new shape is I'll click that little S, which simplifies the shape. So now I have a lot less points. I know it's kind of hard to see. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. So less points going around this shape. It's still really bad. So the first thing that I can do is I can decide, do I have any extraneous points? Now, this one is way far away from the edge. I can either move it, but I'm thinking I'll have a point here and I'll have a point here. Do I really need this extraneous point for such a smooth, basic shape? Probably not. So I'm just going to get rid of it. So I go to the X and delete it. Then I can come up here to the top, the point above it, and decide, okay, it's set to a smooth point. If I click it again, it will reset the shape to a smooth shape. Generally, it will make the handles a little bit more even. Then I can either leave it there and tweak the handles or move the point and tweak the handles. But that looks a little bit better. It's still a little bit off up here, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So again, I'll come down to this point, and that was really bad. So I'm just going to get rid of it. Then I can come to the point above it, and then again, either tweak the handle or reset the shape if I feel like that will be better. And so that's what I do. So I just basically keep going around deciding, do I need the points? Do I need to tweak the points? Do I just get rid of a point? Maybe I need to add one back in here. And so I just click on the line and add a new one back in. And again, I just keep going around until I get a shape somewhat close to what I want. And these points are very far off, so I might have to do a lot of tweaking on the shape, but we're getting close. So the only other thing I wanted to show you, so we're just going to leave it like that for now. So a lot of times Silhouette Studio will create shapes or points that are smooth. So you'll see if I'm on a smooth point, which means smooth up here. Basically what it means is if I click on the point, if I take one of the handles and move it, it's going to move the other side of the handle in unison. But there's many times that I want them to be independent, and so then I'm going to make them a corner. So in this case, maybe I want this handle to come down and follow that path. Now I might have to tweak this handle a little bit to match, move that line down a little bit, and then maybe I want this to be sharper, etc. The other thing that you can decide to do now in the case of a scroll, I probably would do this. And so I'm going to demonstrate this, but I wouldn't use it in this case of this shape, but I would do it for a scroll. But I did want to show it to you. So sometimes I decide, oh, maybe I want my shape to look a little bit different. Maybe I want to have it a little more rounder or less oblong. Maybe I want to add a bump out. So I can add a couple of points. I can add a couple of points and make them corners. So let's do that. And then I can pull the handle out and make some bump outs. So again, this is probably more for scroll work. I might need to add an extra point here for a corner. So you kind of get the idea. So I continue to just keep going around and tweaking the shape and the points. So in this case, there's lots of different shapes. So what I did was I traced all these leaves individually. And again, oh my God, so bad. I don't know why I'm so bad at today, but again, easily fixed. And then even the interior shapes, I will trace individually. And usually I'll make those a different color than the exterior shapes. So I'm going to hit Control Z and get rid of those because, again, they're really bad. And I would just continue to make these shapes until I'm left with a bunch of different shapes. So let's look at some of those. So here are the leaves. And actually, let's zoom in so we can see them a little bit better. And so I have the interior shapes and the exterior shapes. Usually I'll save all the individual pieces. So like this one is separate from this. And I traced all those individual little bump outs. And especially if I'm doing scrolls, I'll save the individual pieces because I'll combine scrolls in different ways to create new shapes. But in this case, it's mostly the interior and the exterior. So for this shape, it's grouped. So I'm going to ungroup this shape. And actually you can see this one shape, this big one was another shape. So let's concentrate on this smaller shape. Oops. So you'll see the exterior was separate from the interior. So I want to select the exterior, then select the interior. So these were all grouped together. So I'm going to ungroup these. And so I can select by just lassoing them all together, and I might have to unselect certain pieces. And then I'll just move this out of the way. So again, let's zoom in so you can see them a little bit better. And in this case, I want to create a shape with these orange pieces cut out. And so in that case, I make a compound path. And those interior pieces will basically be subtracted from the exterior. And so now I have a vine with a bunch of leaves. And again, I could combine those with the other pieces over here. So that's one way of combining. But I do want to show, let's zoom out a little bit. So over here, I have a bunch of shapes that I've used for the pomegranate itself. So here's a bunch of little circles, and the same thing. I went around, traced a couple of circles, and then I basically just copied them and maybe changed them a little bit, resized them, etc. Then this was, let's look at it. This was the shape of the outline. And then what I did was I took that outline and I made an offset. So let's get rid of the offset for now. So I selected this shape here, did an offset, and created the offset because now what I want to do is I want to combine these shapes in different ways to create my cutout. So I'm trying to do a cutout, and depending on whether you're doing a stencil or a cutout, this combining shapes may be slightly different. So I'm going to take this piece and my circles, and I'm going to create a shape similar to the way that I made the other shape. But first I may want to tweak this, make this a little bit bigger. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that the dots don't overlap the outline. And this is a little bit finicky. So just kind of moving it until all the dots are in the interior. Then I'm going to select the two and then make compound path. So the circles are cutouts in the shape. Now, if I'm trying to do a stencil, it will be different again than if I'm trying to do a cutout. So in this case, I want these all to be connected, but I want to see this piece separate from the pomegranate outline itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these two again by make compound path. And then I want to connect these together so they're all one piece. And so what I'll do is, so let's zoom in so you can see. So I'll tweak this shape. So I'll go to the point editor and then I'll take these points and I'm just moving them so they're connected, overlapping the piece that I want to connect it to. And if I leave it this way, it will kind of be hanging by a thread, but in this case, it'll be okay. And if I wanted to, I could connect it at different places, which I may want to do that. And I want to make them a little bit thicker. I can overlap it here, same thing. Tweak the point so it's a little bit thicker. And what I'm really trying to do here is not have these little tiny pieces that are holding the entire thing together. And so now if I select the two shapes, I can come up here to modify, and then I can weld, and it makes it all one piece. And so I would again go around connecting, either making compound paths or welding until I'm left with one entire cutout. And I can show you here, oops, this black image. Here's what I was left with, and you kind of see the work as I went along. But this is the finished piece from the image. And again, I pretty much do this with every image that I start with. And then I save, like I said, I save all the individual pieces, especially if it's pieces of scrolls, because then I can come back in later, combine them in all kinds of different ways. Even something like this, I make it black and white because then it's better if I save it as a JPEG, and then I can use it to create a stamp because I have my own stamp maker. But there's lots of different things that you can do with these images, that you take a picture of yourself, make it into a shape, and then you have your own unique pieces that are copyright and royalty free. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.